because AI sucks up so much computing power, which requires so much electrical power that the current grid can't handle it, or at least it won't for very long. And nothing we can produce, like solar or wind or other sources, is going to be enough to create that kind of power. Hi, and welcome to the Silicon Insider podcast. Hey, Scott, how are you?
I'm well, Michael. Hope you're well, as all these earnings have been coming in all afternoon. Goodness.
Yeah, yeah, it's like a double witching time right now. We have a presidential election in what, 5 days, and we simultaneously have financials coming out of all the tech companies. So we're going to stay away from the presidential stuff, except to note that it's a crazy time. So anything we talk about, could be completely fake or nuts or whatever, and just focus on what we do know. Okay, so first one is, and I don't normally start with this, it's just time to talk about earnings, but all of a sudden there's this burst of coverage. The Wall Street Journal just did a big article, big feature on it. I heard Peter Zeihan, the international, expert on development and all that, talking about small nuclear reactors. Suddenly the buzz is on, and I think it's another consequence of the AI revolution, because AI sucks up so much computing power, which requires so much electrical power that the current grid can't handle it, or at least it won't for very long. And nothing we can produce, like solar or wind or other sources, is going to be enough to create that kind of power. So we had early this month, Google, actually Alphabet, said it signed a power purchase agreement with Kairos Power for up to 500 megawatts of a small nuclear power plant. And then Microsoft is doing the same thing. Amazon has said it would work with X Energy on a 320 megawatt project. And Larry Ellison at Oracle, in an earnings call in September, said that his company is designing a 1 gigawatt plus data center with building permits for 3 small nuclear reactors. I mean, it apparently is on. Now, nobody's delivered one of these small nuclear reactors. There's talk about firing up some aging ones, but those are all 50 years old. You've got to come up with something new. And a lot of these companies are getting huge amounts of venture money to develop what are essentially semi-trailers that are nuclear power plants that you could, in theory, pull up to a company, but even more likely, pull up to an older, like coal-powered station and hook up into the grid that way and produce this power to drive these various, AI operations. And I guess the big one is chat, AI, OpenAI, that they're talking about building some giant plants just to power their operation. We're going to talk about that next. What do you think? Is this another tech revolution emerging, and we're right at the beginning of it? And maybe it's being oversold, but in a few years we may start seeing, nuclear power plants heading down Interstate 80 to go to, the next tech company that needs it. What do you think?
I mean, I don't know if we're there yet, but this is a classic new technology driving a return to something old school. Remember, Microsoft kicked this off by saying it was going to restart part of 3 Mile Island. And 3 Mile Island is a time, a place, a term, a news event that you have to be a certain age to recognize, and not all that positively.
Yeah,
But
and if you do, you get a chill down your back.
right.
Restarting
And
Three
yet
Mile Island?
this is because of the hottest new thing in technology, which is AI. And on the one hand, it's kind of a positive move. These big tech companies are admitting, look, AI and chat takes so much energy to use and to put forward and to try to make a consumer product. And similar things were being said about crypto and Bitcoin and the like, and nothing really happened except we taxed the grid, the energy grid.
Yeah.
And so to say, hey, let's go to nuclear power for this AI revolution that is upon us, in some ways makes sense. Even environmentalists have said, as a bridge between coal and electricity, nuclear power makes sense because it's fairly clean, for the
Yeah.
most part. And so you are sort of pleasing the environmentalists who are worried about the energy use that AI will cause. And at the same time, you're giving these big tech companies a chance to not only power their AI offerings, but like you said at the top, even create some new facilities, some new jobs, perhaps. I don't know if we'll see a nuclear revolution, but we are likely to see these tech companies build and create mini power plants, right?
Right. Now I can see it happening. I think the technology is feasible, but there's still some problems. I mean, we still don't know what to do with the waste.
Right.
You
Well,
know,
nuclear power is
we're
not
going to ship
entirely.
we're going to ship it to Haiti. We're already, I mean, to Puerto Rico. I mean, we're already shipping all of our garbage to Puerto Rico. That was the source of that joke last week. You see these pictures of Puerto Rico. They're actually the garbage dump for the United States. Now we're going to load nuclear waste there. Are we going to bury it under a mountain in Nevada like they used to talk about? Where
I
does it
don't
go?
know. And the idea that not only are we refiring up part of 3 Mile Island, but actually creating new mini power plants means, of course, these things all have consequences, and every action has a reaction. And so, again, a lot of the environmentalists out there say this is a somewhat cleaner way to do it, certainly than coal and gas. But
It's
on the other hand, how long until we can develop enough, say, solar power to power this AI need that we seem to feel and that these companies are doing? I don't know the answer to that, but it is fascinating to think that someone in this most forward thinking of fields was willing to say, let's take a look back at something that we used to use, and that made obviously some headlines, as you say, that put a chill down your spine when you hear terms like, hey, let's fire up 3 Mile Island again.
Yeah, I think that was a bad PR idea. You want to talk about future clean, no carbon, all of that stuff. You don't want to talk about 3 Mile Island. What are you going to do next? Talk about refiring up Chernobyl? I mean,
That I
so
doubt, but
I like to think in my heart of hearts that there's actually a race on between two new power technologies. We have nuclear, which we know we can do, but maybe Lawrence Livermore Labs can finally come through and give us practical fusion. Fusion would solve the same problem without the risk, I would think, of nuclear. But it's
right. I mean,
it's
I imagine there are Stanford right now has probably got many, many people thinking, here, I'm going to jump off and use my degree to get into an AI startup. And then maybe just as many people thinking, I'm going to use my degree to figure out clean ways to power that AI startup. And this could be the meeting of the minds that society needs to go forward. Who knows?
well, I like to think so. Okay. Well, speaking of AI, uh, I'm sure you covered this today, Thursday. Uh, ChatGPT was announced its search engine. OpenAI has finally announced it, hinted at it, the beta version, but now it has officially launched its Google killer. And I'm intrigued if it'll work. I mean, Google is the most ubiquitous source of information in the world right now. It got us off of libraries and newspapers and encyclopedias and everything else. And it gave us this reality that has largely defined our world for the last 25 years. Now you have OpenAI giving us a AI based search engine. And we know Google's moving towards that, but I mean the originators of the modern AI reality has given us this search engine that you'll be able to get. Well, it's a fine-tuned version of GPT-4, and it'll serve up information from the web, sports scores, news, stock quotes, and more, along with links to relevant sources. and you can ask it follow-up questions. That's a pretty powerful search engine.
This is really, I think, a horse that's been let out of the barn. I mean, remember, when you go on Google right now, even in the Google search bar, not to mention just talking to your phone, but if you go on that search bar, the first thing that pops up is an AI generated answer. And that brings up a lot of questions because are you going to trust the AI? And how is Google going to make all of its money? And I mean all of its money off of links and ads if you're just getting an AI summary whenever you search. It also brings up what Apple is trying to do, and Samsung for that matter, with their phones, which is have you just talk to an agent, let's say Siri, and then you get either Apple Intelligence or ChatGPT to give you an answer. So that's already happening. And the question is, are we going to be happy with the answer?
I use it all the time. I'm working on my next book, and whenever I have a question about something, I just type in Google, what is such and such, or what's the word for such and such? And boom, I get an AI answer. I don't go any further. I'm not going to other sites or anything else. So Google's not making money from that.
I mean, not from that particular thing. So it really is changing the way that we use search, full stop. And eventually we may, look at a search bar like we look at, a butter churn or a check or, whatever, just like something that's still there, but we don't really need it because there are easier ways to get our results. And again, my skepticism has always been, are we getting the right results with one AI answer, as opposed to searching through several clicks and links and things like that? But boy, search has already radically changed in even just the last few months. And I don't see that change going away. And it makes sense for ChatGPT to try to become a search engine because the technology that it cranks out with ChatGPT itself is really how we now search.
But I think they're going to market it and brand it and position it as something unique in itself, an alternative to going on Google. And I think that's a challenge to Google.
Absolutely. Everybody's getting into this now, and I think it's just a matter of time before Elon Musk unleashes his own, Grok search engine on Twitter to say, this is now the way that you find information when you search on Twitter. And boom, you've got AI doing that for you too. And again, it'll all come back to, do we trust this? Are we getting the right information? But it seems to be the fastest way to do it. And it also seems to be the way of the future.
Yeah, but metaphysically, it sort of takes away choice in a weird way. You get the definitive answer. You don't get 12 sites and links that you can go to find alternative points of view. We more and more seem to accept there's one answer, and it's been decided somewhere in the ether by, it's some sort of silicon mind. And I'm not sure that's good for us.
No, it's not good for us at all. A lack of choice is bad. Believing that a tech giant has one answer that's the answer to fit you is a terrible idea.
Yeah, definitive. Yeah, you're not supposed to look anywhere else. Right. So maybe having multiple AI search engines, the solution is going to be to go to a bunch of them to get alternative answers.
I remember the original Yahoo was a search engine, but then it also would say, hey, here are some other ways to search that are also one click away. And I remember even at the time thinking, that's pretty democratic right there. Good for them.
Yeah. Random juxtapositions. I mean, we need that. We don't need definitive solutions and answers in our daily life. Okay. Supermicro. Remember we were talking about Supermicro a few months ago, and it was growing faster than NVIDIA. And it was the second hottest thing out there, and got all the AI hype. And it grew to some extraordinary number. It was 50 billion or something, 50 billion or more than 50 billion.
Well, in around 70 billion.
70 billion, and it lost 50 billion basically in the last couple of weeks. And now they insult to injury. I mean, this is what you don't want to happen when you're on the stock market. This week, They were out there, they were added to the S&P 500 in March, and now they've lost 2/3 of its value. And this week, Ernst and Young, their accounting firm, resigned. That doesn't bode well. When your accounting firm that does all of the auditing and certifies that you're running a real business and not a corrupt operation, when they walk out, that's what one analyst called it, a significant hurdle. Oh, I'd say more than that. I think there's a good chance that they're going to get kicked off of NASDAQ, which is an amazing turn of events in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, this was my story earlier today. This is a fascinating study in something gone horribly wrong. It's not just a hurdle. I mean, when your big six or big four or whatever we are accounting firm says, A, we can't handle it, we're leaving, and B, does it in a manner that you as a company have to publicly disclose, that's a disaster. And that's the kind of thing that happens to a company that has burned through $50 billion in market value in an extremely short time after, a very short time after becoming one of the AI darlings, one of the top Silicon Valley AI darlings. This is a company that has been grinding it out based in San Jose for decades. They've been around for a long time. They've been seen as very strong, very steady company, good leadership. They get into the AI game. They become the darling. They rise, to the tune of $70 billion out of nowhere. And then it almost entirely crumbles on rumors. And then indeed, E&Y saying, we are not going to handle this. I mean, imagine, Mike, someone coming to your house to do your taxes, looking at a few forms and saying, I can't do this. I might go to jail. You're on your own. I mean, that's bad news for a household. Multiply that by whatever, and you get an entire company.
You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of those people that, live a regular life. They, years and years, and all of a sudden they win the super lotto. And this, a Brinks truck backs up to the house and dumps off millions and millions, in this case, billions and billions of dollars. And the story always ends up a year or two later, they're broke again because they just can't handle the impact of all that. I mean, it's a miracle NVIDIA has survived the growth it has in the last few years. But I guess Super Micro, I don't even know if they survive all this.
I don't know. And again, there's a fairly strong base. This has been a chip maker for a long time to fall back on. But I don't know if they just got extremely ahead of their skis when it came to the accounting and the financial of it all. But there are investors who, over the last, say, 6 months, invested a ton of money. And if they didn't, make and pull out some of that profit in time, they took a really crazy roller coaster ride up and down. And someone may have bought, certainly near the top. I mean, they split their stock 10 for 1. And now they're back, back in the 20s and 30s again. It's an incredible, incredible fall.
So what do you predict? They're going to claw their way back slowly, or are they going to just sell the assets? Shut down.
Again,
their
I don't know.
Are a lot.
Right. I don't know that they're a sell the assets level, but look, when your accountant flees, there's probably more legal stuff ahead, right?
Yeah.
It's often a precursor when the accountant says, I'm out, I can't touch these books, you're on your own, and you're a gigantic accounting firm that's normally brought in to solve problems. And so I think there's probably more ugly revelations ahead. But then again, this is a company that still has a significant market value and lots of employees and all that. So, I certainly hope it doesn't happen.
When your accounting firm walks away, that's a precursor almost always to a gigantic shareholders class action suit.
Right. I mean, they lost 75% of their value in a very short period of time. That's also often a precursor to a shareholder value suit. This company went up so fast and just couldn't handle it. And it turned out, according to E&Y, the books weren't perfect. So I don't know what happens from here. But yeah, these are gigantic red flags going forward even. So I don't know who jumps in now other than the SEC.
Okay, well, now let's move on to a Lazarus story of a company coming back. Intel reported its Q3 earnings Thursday, and they beat expectations on revenues. They fell back on earnings. They didn't match that because of impairment charges, but their stock went up 12%. Is Intel back?
As soon as you said Lazarus, I knew what you meant. I think it's a little too early for that. They're still losing money. They're just getting clobbered by chip companies doing it right, a la NVIDIA, Qualcomm, et cetera. Broadcom's in there. Intel is still trying to get relevance. I actually saw Pat Gelsinger on CNBC, right after the earnings came out, and he was impressive, talking about how, hey, we knew we need to get into AI. We need to get our server game right. And while he spoke, the stock went up. So good for him in delivering a positive message, but the numbers are still pretty ugly. And this is a company, by the way, ugly numbers after huge layoffs.
Yes. Now, on the list of companies you mentioned, you didn't mention one this time. AMD. What's going on at AMD?
No, I should have mentioned AMD. AMD is still also eating Intel's lunch.
Yes, but AMD didn't have a good announcement, did they, this week?
Their numbers are fine. You're looking at some of these companies, and maybe after their earning reports, they're dropping. But these are companies that are making so much money, both in absolute legitimate sales, but also because of this AI sort of pixie dust that's floating around. We just talked about Supermicro. AMD is benefiting, and I think it's benefiting from a position of trust because it's got a great CEO who she's very well respected. It's got a long-term business. So the stock may fluctuate a bit, and I still consider AI to be something of a question mark. But AMD, I would put in with those other companies as doing the run up in the right way and earning its investor love right now.
Systematically. Okay, just a quick mention. Amazon beat the street estimates. Its stock went up 5%. Microsoft had better than expected numbers. It's kind of weird. They had better than expected numbers, but they still had the steepest sell-off in 2 years, and the stock fell 6%. Why is that? They're hooked up with ChatGPT. Their cloud business is doing well as far as I can tell. What happened?
Oh, those are two separate things. The cloud is hot. The cloud is proven. The cloud is a revenue cash machine. You also mentioned ChatGPT. They're not a cash machine. They're still losing money. Microsoft is taking a loss because of its involvement in OpenAI. But OpenAI, wasn't it just valued at like $167 billion?
Yeah.
At some point, Microsoft, which has already had a second life as an AI leader, at some point, could it be that Microsoft has yet a third life as OpenAI tracking stock, right? Everyone's going to want to get in on this IPO, assuming there is one. And how do you do that? Maybe Microsoft, because it owns so much of OpenAI, is the way to do that. So right now it's taking some losses.
Oh, you mean sell off some of its holdings?
I don't know. Who knows? When a company invests in something that gets that big, they must own a ton of shares in OpenAI. So right now, it's eating a little bit of a loss to boost its protege. But that is one, protege with a lot of potential, and Microsoft stands at some point to gain a lot. So the Microsoft OpenAI story is being written, but it's definitely not yet finished.
Be interesting to see if Microsoft just sells off enough to boost its earnings every quarter. It could do it probably for 20 years.
It does fine with its software business, but it's really hit a golden goose there, at least for now.
Okay, Microsoft and Meta both announced nice profits, but both of them saw their stock sag. And I heard one commentator say it's because they aren't building data centers fast enough, that the feeling is they're not going to be able to keep up with the traffic that's heading their way. Do you buy that? I'm not sure I do.
Maybe in the OpenAI sense of Microsoft, and granted that gets to what you were talking about earlier with the nuclear reactors because they need more power. I think for Meta, Meta has just had an incredible run up to its stock price to see some profit takers moving in after earnings.
500% in the last, X
Yeah,
number of
that makes sense. But also, part of the reason that Meta went up so high was because it could prove that it can cut, it can have that year of efficiency. And in the last year, Meta, while printing cash and making investors even wealthier, actually hired a bunch of people. It's growing again, and that's good for the overall economy. But it's not, it's not as efficient, I guess. But still, I mean, Meta is Meta. It's a cash machine, and I just can't imagine anything that can slow it down, except Mark Zuckerberg's continued insistence on spending all this money in the metaverse, which has not shown any.
Zuckerberg's white whale. But I saw the Meta Ray-Ban first TV ads. It looks like a Ray-Ban. I mean, Buddy Holly could have worn those glasses. I mean, it's perfect. I wonder if that's, a fad that's going to explode at some point.
It might. I still wonder if that's where search or the platform is going. I think the Vision Pro is not where it's going. If it's going to go anywhere, I agree with you that a good-looking pair of Ray-Bans that, even when you're not using them, just look like a good-looking pair of Ray-Bans may be where the future is if we want to touch our glasses and talk to our glasses and take photos that way. Then it may be that way because that's the least obtrusive way for us to do it.
Right. And consumer tech, when somebody takes an existing technology and makes it appeal to the average person, I mean, I honestly believe I saw the first Teslas because I was so tired of Priuses and all that with these kind of hobbit cars. And then all of a sudden, Elon comes out with something that looks like almost a sports car. It was like, oh, okay, now I can buy one. I'm not going to be driving around something that looks like a shoe. These things, it appealed to the average sensibility, which I consider myself, just part of the hoi polloi. And I'm like, yes, that's what I've been looking for. I want a sports car. I want a Porsche. I don't want a square shoe, with no radiator on the front. I mean, Elon nailed it. And I think I get the feeling that somewhere along the line, I don't know if it's going to be these Ray-Bans, but somewhere along the line, they're going to make glasses of some form acceptable for everyday use and not require a compromise.
Right. I think we're getting closer, and Meta seems to be the closest right now. And they are going to school, like Elon went to school on Apple and Steve Jobs, and the importance of design and coolness. Even if it's just a pair of headphones, you want to look cool wearing them, and that's important.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Okay, did you cover Apple today? Because as we're talking, Apple just announced
the earnings. Yeah,
and I heard an interview with Cook on the radio, on the TV too, that he talking about. He was trying to be optimistic. He said, cloud's doing really well, and we're dealing with China, and that the new iOS is experiencing a faster adoption rate than the last generation. But I guess the real question was, has Apple kept up with AI? I mean, there seems to be a general consensus on the stock markets that Apple isn't quite there yet.
Well, that's because it's developing what it calls Apple Intelligence. And that's a very cute way for Apple to sort of brand its own AI.
Yeah.
But let's face it, companies like OpenAI and Anthropic are probably pretty far ahead because that's all they do. And they've been doing it for a long time. And so Apple is wise to, get in bed with OpenAI and say, okay, if Apple Intelligence doesn't give it to you, maybe ChatGPT will. And that makes sense. And that's the kind of move that Tim Cook makes. And that's why Apple is the most valuable company in the world and has even gotten a stock market bump in the AI world when it's really not known as an AI company. Somehow it managed to get in there. And that's a credit to, I think, Cook's marketing.
No, he's a very careful guy and he does it systematically and he's doing everything right. But I wonder, there are certain times when you need flash. And Steve Jobs had the flash. He would save up stuff and drop it on the marketplace and just sort of blow everybody away. And I think this slow rollout of Apple Intelligence hasn't helped the company. And I know it's against his personality, but he probably should have listened more to his marketing people.
I mean, I guess, and I don't know what those marketing people would have said. Apple is always playing a very long game and trying to do it in a more careful way. Right now, AI and Google's a perfect example of a company that got in too quick and was embarrassed by the results. That's
Right.
not what Apple does. Apple saw what Google did and went through, and we're probably like, whoa, let's slow play this because we're Apple. We can afford to do it. And they still came out with a cool new phone, and they're going to gradually roll out the AI part of it. And they may get a little knock here and there because they're going slowly, but they're Apple, and they just always seem to do it pretty much right. Although Vision Pro, they're not perfect, but when it comes to AI and something that has embarrassed their peers, I think they want to do it slowly.
Okay. Real quick, in real time, how's Apple stock doing?
Apple stock is down a few dollars or lost a few dollars after hours. This is Thursday night as we speak, but come on, a few bucks here and there. Considering that the 16 sales were better than a lot of people expected, and it's not an AI company yet. So again, any boost that they've gotten, and for some reason they've gotten an AI pixie dust boost, I think is premature. Apple has not shown that, hey, we're going to make revenue off this thing yet, except that it's trying to get people to upgrade their phones. And obviously that's how it makes a lot of money if they want to get the AI. But as someone who still has a couple generation old phone and therefore can't get it, but I've tried it on a new phone, I haven't, I haven't pulled out the credit card yet. I'm just not entirely sure I need to do this right away, but I'll mess around more and see. And I think a lot of people are sort of taking that wait and see attitude.
Thinking in the future, I mean, Apple's known for protecting privacy and a lot of things that go against the grain in tech. Apple could really gain an edge over everybody if it introduced Apple Intelligence in such a way that it's more accurate and trustworthy. And
Right.
maybe that's what Cook's waiting for, that it can really show a product that you can trust. Because I don't think people completely trust. They don't trust Wikipedia, right? But they use it. People don't trust AI right now, but they use it to come out with an Apple Intelligence that you can actually believe in. Would be
And you've described a lot of what Tim Cook's business personality is. Apple didn't come out with a smartphone first. They didn't come out with the tablet first. They didn't come out with a laptop first. They didn't come out with the headphones first. They didn't come out with a music player first. They didn't come out with software and services first. And yet, all these years later,
they
they're the
want.
most valuable company in the world.
Yeah. Okay. Well, as we go into Crazy Week, I have a couple crazy stories I want to end with. The first one is some mathematicians finally sat down. Do you know the infinite monkey theorem, that if you have enough monkeys on enough typewriters, you could reproduce Shakespeare. Okay, well, they actually worked it out, and it turns out it would take more time for those monkeys to come up with, say, Hamlet than the life of the universe. So I think we've been all repeating that humorously over the years. Well, it's not right. And finally, oh, you'll love this one. I don't know if you covered this story, but a Russian court ruled that Google owes Russian media stations. Well, the original fine was several $1 million, I think, for not carrying Russian stations and embargoing them because of the Ukraine war and all that. Well, part of the fine was that it would double every week. So we have infinite monkeys, But if you remember the story of the grains of rice on the chessboard doubling every square, which we always use for Moore's Law, well, the total fine, the fine was originally $1,025 per day, but it doubled every week. Okay, it is now at 20 decillion dollars. Okay, now folks, that's a 20 followed by 30 zeros. I believe I just did a computation about Moore's Law the other day, and I think that that number is actually greater than the number of molecules in the universe.
Certainly all the money in the world. So if you want to know where all the money in the world goes,
it's all the money in the world, plus all the grains of sand in the world, plus all the raindrops that fall on the world in a given year. And I think it's still more. So Google's going to have to increase its revenue model if it's ever going to answer that fine. So that's it for now, folks. You can find us on Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Apple. Do you think Amazon could write a check or a money order?
Not that big.
Not Apple Podcasts and YouTube. You can see Scott on Facebook and X, and of course, almost every weeknight on NBC Bay Area. And you can hear me regularly on the BBC radio show Business Matters. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.